Take me on the wind. Take me on the wind in a basket, Lord. Wicked as I am, write it all down on a flying scroll. Send it on the wind. Send it on the wind on a flying scroll. Open up the mouth. Open up the mouth of the mountains, Lord. Send the riders forth. Send the riders forth from the mountains, Lord. They're straining at the straps, with pressure in the veins as they long to run. Carry in your spirit, Lord. Carry in your spirit up to Ephraim. Carry in your spirit, Lord. The carry in your spirit up to Ephraim. Go and make a crown, set it on the head of Joshua. His name will be the bridge, and he will ever sit upon the throne. wanna tell everybody, everybody I know, sell all my treasure just to buy and hold this love that I found at the end of my road. He said, hold on, son, I'm gonna heal you. And I wanna tell everybody, everybody I know, sell all my treasure just to buy and hold this love that I found at the end of my road. He said, hold on, son, I'm gonna heal you, so hold on. I need a doctor, I need a priest, I need a helping hand, oh God. Show me a vision, show me a dream, and I will listen. A few years back you showed me who you were. I need showing again. A few years back I knew just who I was. I need knowing again. I need knowing again. You're showing me the greatness of your love with your gracious patience. You're showing me the kindness of your heart with your gracious patience. You're showing me that you are in no rush with your gracious patience. You're showing me that you are in love with your gracious patience. A few years back you showed me who you were. I need showing again. A few years back I knew just who I was. I need knowing again. You're showing me the greatness of your love with your gracious patience. You're showing me the kindness of your heart with your gracious patience. You're showing me that you are in no rush with your gracious patience. You're showing me that you are in love with your gracious patience. And I need to hear the greatness. I need to feel with your gracious and I need to know you. Remind me again. And I need to show me the kindness. And I need to feel you with your spent last night just backing up my hard drive in case I spill my coffee on the keys. Of course, even then, there's the matter of bit decay. No matter what I do, it's gonna fade away. I've been walking down the street, and I've been walking back. There's not a lot to do when I'm in between wearing a mask. strange rhythm. My darkest days and moonlit nights brought you by my side. Wherever I go and wherever I've been has brought me to the state I'm in. So whatever's coming round the bend, count me in, count me in. I'm stuck on the highway, on a thin red ribbon that cuts through the twilight. I'm bleeding out slowly as the flesh pink sky gives way to the night. And another day slips by. I'm at the wrong party with the wrong people this evening. I've got a sinking feeling like I left the stove on at home. I'm at the wrong party with the wrong people this evening. I can't seem to shake the feeling that I don't belong. Lose me in the narrow velvet seam of the night. Lose me in the alley in the flicker of the lights. Every second speeds at my pulse a second more. Conjures my resolve to meet you on the dance floor. When I snake my way through the writhing of the crowd, slipping through the sweat and the madness and the loud, I expect to see a single person that I know, but I'm at the wrong party and my friends didn't shout. I'm at the wrong party with the wrong people this evening. I've got a sinking feeling like I left the stove on at home. I'm at the wrong party with the wrong people this evening. I can't seem to shake the feeling that I don't belong. So somehow I lost myself somewhere here in the haze, and somehow I'll never find it again. Somehow I gained some wisdom somewhere here in the haze, and somehow I'll never find that again. Peering from the edge at the corner of my mind, looking for a reason I should go back inside. Of course there it is, the ever worsening divide between where I am, me, myself and I. My patience burns low like the end of a match, tingling fingers pulling closed on the latch. Nothing here tonight really felt right at all, and as I close the back door, the air hit me like a wall. I'm at the wrong party with the wrong people this evening. I've got a sinking feeling like I left the stove on at home. I was at the wrong party with the wrong people this evening. I can't seem to shake the feeling that I don't belong. I feel the illusion slipping that drew me here. Somehow the bass face cancels out what I want to hear. At the end of the night, when the lights come on, slip out the back and go down the alley headed home. I heard you fractured your collarbone, and I thought, what a peculiar thing to know about someone and not to know what color their eyes are. Alright, I guess all I'm saying is we are too separate. All of the people in passing just walking their dogs down the street, and I don't even know what their names are. I think you can relate to what's been going on lately with me and everybody I know. It seems like these days everybody's gone crazy. Why let the weeds come and choke out our optimism? And we all just wanna know why. I heard a neighbor was hungry, and I thought, what a peculiar thing to hear when all around me are data plans and sinking sand condos. All built by one. I guess what I'm afraid of is we are too mechanical. All of the people in passing just working to make their ends meet, but we forget what we're meeting ends for. I think you can relate to how the bottom of the tank feels, scraping the gasoline dry. I think you can relate to how the thickness in the air feels when the sun hits the edge of the summer sky, and you throw open your arms and scream at the lightning bugs. Why, God, why, God, why? I heard you calling my name from a long way off, and even now I can still hear that echo here in the noise of the grocery store. All I can cling to is all you have given me, whispers of solace in a jumble of SUVs. All is joy and pain and comfort in the light behind the shadow. I think you can relate to how the change in the air feels when the ionized wind sweeps through. I think you can relate to how the rain on your skin feels when the black clouds slip across the summer sky, and you run in for cover, a smile on your face, and you have no idea why. Closer than a brother, won't you be that friend to me? Here in the good times, when I am in need, when I am distant, and when I draw near. Closer than You are closer than my skin, Lord, inside my marrow bone. Ever, always with me, ever leading me home. You're in my disaster, you're in my routine. And Jesus, you're closer than a brother, won't you draw close to me? You are closer than a brother, so won't you draw close to me? Oh Lord, you're closer than a brother, so won't you draw close? Thought I needed to put some work in. Turns out you're always working. Thought I needed to be the man, yeah, but I'm a boy. I need you, please. I thought I needed to put some work in. Turns out you're always working. Thought I needed to be the man, but I'm a boy. I need you, Father. I need you. Father, 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 I need you. Rejoice, so shout out and be glad. Your King is coming, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. As for you, because of my covenant, I will free you from the waterless pit. Return to your home, prisoners of hope. I will restore you and make you whole. just a while the hours away. But class is cancelled just for the day. We're going to the city to help in whatever way. All of the way and we're singing la 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 la. All of the way and we're singing la 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 la. Down the alley of a city row home stands the figure of the toughest man you've ever seen. Hands me a shovel and he says, hello son, we're gonna work to dig us a garden today. And all through the day we're singing la 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 la. And all through the day we're singing la 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 la. Everybody on the block is living in a bottle, living on a loan, or dying at the barrel of a gun. The man with the money's got no money for you. There's no food to eat and there's no job to do. And all through the day we're praying, grow this garden, Lord. And all through the day we're praying, grow this garden, Lord.
All of a sudden, thunderclouds gather. There is a sound of abundance of rain. He said the Lord's favor is upon us. He's blessing us with his tears of amazing grace. Soaking wet in a living room, we're singing hallelujah. Tender love is taking root, singing hallelujah.
Wash me clean, I need you, Lord. Singing
Amen.
should we fast and keep all our religious ways? Should we make a show of keeping all the holy days? Should we lock the doors and turn around rich and poor? Comfortably ignore the pain.
I feel like I might not need this, but hey everybody, good evening. So glad you're all here. I think I know all of you, but in case you don't know me, my name is Brenna. I'm the arts director here at Prov, and if you're not familiar, at Providence, Prov Arts is like the umbrella for everything creative that happens here, both like affecting our gatherings on Sundays and affecting like creative projects that we do outside of Sundays, like original music, original films, things like that. So we really value and believe that creating is a part of what God's made us to do. And we care as a church about empowering artists to do that, especially as you walk with Christ, knowing that like you're made for that. You're made to express back to him because he made you. So we gather like this to encourage and empower that in each other. And Mark Ferris, who has been a part of the arts community at Prov for many, many years, has been doing just that quite prolifically with his recent album, Zechariah. So Mark has worked on a presentation to share his process with us tonight about, what it was like to work on this project. And we thought that it would be a great opportunity for all of us to learn about what it means to create both as an artist and as a follower of Christ and to learn from his process. So really excited he's here. Tonight is going to look a little different than if you've been to artist gatherings in the past where we break out and create things together and share together. Tonight, the body of the time is going to be hearing from Mark and his process, and there will be a time for Q&A, so hang on to your questions. And if you are not already hearing about or getting emails about art stuff at Prov or hearing about what's going on, email me, Brenna, at providencewc.org, and I'd love to get you in the loop and connected so that we can keep you informed on what's going on and what's happening. So without further ado, I'd love us to give a big old warm welcome to Mark Ferris, a.k.a. For Tuesday, on the stage.
Hello? I don't really quite need it. It's like there's almost enough of you to justify me being up here on this stage, but it's enough. So yeah, thanks Brenna for the intro, and thanks to everybody, Prov Artist Initiative, for having me. Like Brenna said, I've been to these before, and usually they're very involved and collaborative, where we hear a little bit from people of all different artistic disciplines. And so I thought, well, I want to talk about my project, but I want to talk about lessons from my project specifically in a way that hopefully is helpful for artists of all creative disciplines that we might have here, be that visual art or, music, pottery, dance, whatever it may be, writing. Just to introduce myself, my name is Mark. I go by the artist name For Tuesday. I've been making songs as For Tuesday for a couple of years now. I released a series of singles to start. It's all just me doing the writing, recording, production, all that. And 2 years ago now, I guess, I released an EP, and then it seemed like, well, the natural next step as a music artist is, okay, I got to try to do an album now, So that's what you do. So I moved from singles to an album, and my album that I just released is entitled Zechariah. And some of my favorite albums are concept albums, and so I wanted to challenge myself to do an album where all the songs are in a similar theme. So for my album, each song corresponds to a chapter of Zechariah, the minor prophet from the Old Testament. And yeah, created this album over a 2-year period from 2021 to 2023. Like I said, fully written, recorded, mixed, all that released by me. And I think many lessons were learned along the way. So that's what I'm hoping to share here tonight. All right. So here's my outline. I think that when I think about my artistic process for this album project, I can break it down into 3 major pieces of work that I had to do to be successful. And I think this is universal for any discipline of, because hopefully we have some diversity of artistic disciplines here. So conceptualization, formation, and distribution. And I'm going to talk through each of those, but just high level, conceptualization is conceiving an idea and distilling it into a message you wish to convey. Formation is creating distinct artifacts to communicate your message. And then distribution is making those artifacts experienceable. So if you make a painting, you hang it on the wall, right? So we're going to jump first into conceptualization. How am I thinking about that? How did that go? So, there's also potential homework here. So as I go through the presentation, I would love if you would take note of key points that you think might be applicable to your discipline. And we might, at the end, I should have changed this slide, we may or may not split into groups and share our key takeaways, depending how much time we have. But if not, you can just keep it to yourself. All right. Conceptualization. So one big thing that I just came upon in my process is that authenticity is really important to audiences, now more than ever. And big corporate marketing firms even know this. And they pour tons of money into studying this stuff. And they have determined what we already knew, which is that authenticity is key. So Forbes says authenticity is the way to millennials' hearts. McKinsey calls Gen Z the true Gen. Gen Z marketing should be focused on authenticity, connection, and trust. I think that that's something that we've all intrinsically experienced, and it's not necessarily limited to those generations, but it's certainly a trend that these marketing firms are picking up on, which I think is interesting. But they struggle. Traditional marketing techniques, they struggle to buy authenticity. So I did a little research. Dine Brands owns Applebee's, and they have a gross capital expenditure for 2023 projected at $33 million. Big money. Now, that's not just marketing, but there's some big marketing spend rolled into that. And yet, what we see is that Applebee's is known for Chef Mike cooking the meals in the microwave over there at Applebee's, not the picture of authenticity that they may wish to portray, right? So it's not working. You can't buy authenticity. Okay, how are we going to buy authenticity, they say? Well, this leads us to the rise of influencer marketing, which we have all experienced. We can just pay people to be our brand. Isn't that great? It works. So there's somebody and they're authentic. I just pay them and they can be authentic for me. Well, okay, that works, I guess. But why does it work? So we have a person in blue craving authenticity, and we have a brand with a message. And their message is, buy a new phone. And the brand goes to an authentic person and says, hey, authentic person, go tell that person to buy a new phone. And the authentic person is actually a human being, and they say, oh, I bought a new phone and helped me reconnect with college friends. And the person craving that authenticity connects with it, and it's a successful strategy. So, and again, if you take the authentic person out, the brand is like, buy a phone, and the person is like, no, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't work. So you remove the authentic person, and the power is gone of the message. So what does that mean for us as artists? Is that we should remove any kind of external pressure. Like in this example, the external pressure is the corporate brand influence, right? If you remove that external pressure and tell your own story, people are craving that. direct connection, and they'll connect with it. And I'm not saying that you're going to make money this way, but people certainly crave that. And I think that as artists, that's something that we can recognize. And there's nothing intrinsically wrong with this either. This is fine if you do this. That's great. No problem at all. But at the same time, we should use this illustration to recognize the power of our own personal story to make an impression on someone and connect with someone. So in summary, on authenticity, you have a power that money can't buy. Your authentic story is a powerful tool to connect with people. And I think that you should be encouraged by that realization and put it to work. Which for me in my project, I think that I was setting out to create something very authentic to myself, and something that I was passionate about and interested in, kind of based on this premise that if I do that, people will find it interesting and engaging. So I didn't go, contrary to the first slide, I didn't go out and do a bunch of market research or something. I just found something that I connected with authentically, and hope that audiences like you guys will as well. So I have the power of authentic storytelling. Great. As an artist. So the next question is, well, what am I trying to say and why? And for me, I think that was split into two questions there, or two possibilities. There's manufactured ideas and what I'm calling wellspring ideas. So for my project, a manufactured idea was, I said, hey, I'm going to do an album about a book of the Bible. So I manufactured this idea. I don't really feel passionate about that yet. It was just kind of like this is a thing I could do. But then the wellspring ideas that started springing up inside me as an artist happened when I started working inside that framework of the manufactured idea to actually produce something. So the wellspring was like, all right, let's read Zechariah chapter 1 for my concept. And as I read that, some things spring up inside me, like lyric ideas or melodies or just feelings from it. And that's like springing up. And I think that part of what helped me work in this like concept framework was like knowing this is the topic, and I'm going to try to capture these things that spring up and figure out how they fit into the framework. So just a thought. Something else. I think go deep on your concept as an artist, and it pays off. I think people are more open to your story than you expect, kind of like we said with authenticity. People want to hear what interests you. Like, I don't know if at a party you've ever gotten cornered by somebody who has like a really niche hobby and they just want to talk about it. And it's great. Like, I enjoy that. I want to hear, like, all right, man, tell me all about G-gauge trains, and let's just dwell on that. I think it's interesting. They might think it's boring. I think it's cool. But in that, telling this story, like, I want to know, what is it about your story that connects with you? And so for that reason, I like to show instead of tell. We always had show and tell in school, but I'm more on the show side. And by that, I mean, as an artist, you got to think, when you see a sunset, do you think like, oh, there's a sunset? Okay, good. Or do you feel something intrinsically first before you observe like, oh, it's a sunset? Like, I think that my instant reaction is like just an impression of beauty rather than acknowledgement of what I'm experiencing. And so to me, that's the difference of narrative versus exposition in our art, where in writing, you writers know narrative is when you write like, I did this and then I did that, or the earth rotated around the sun and so it got dark. And, in the sunset example, whereas exposition is like the purple light streamed through the clouds and, you infer that the sun is setting. So for example, from my project, I got to Zechariah 5, chapter 5, and I'll read that real quick. Zechariah 5 says, or an excerpt from it. Again, I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, a flying scroll. And he said to me, "What do you see?" I answered, "I see a flying scroll. Its length is 20 cubits. Its width is 10 cubits." Very narrative right there. And he said to me, "This is the curse that goes out over the face of the whole land. For everyone who steals will be cleaned out according to what is on one side, and everyone who swears falsely will be cleaned out according to what is on the other side." Okay? So, to fit my concept framework, I have to write a song for this, for my thing. So my first attempt was this. I went out and lifted my eyes and saw a flying scroll. It brought the justice of the Lord all along its patrol. It's like, hey, it rhymes. Not bad, but it wasn't really that a wellspring idea, you know? So I gave it another try, and I tried to go more, I guess, exposition. Not really a writer, but I think that's the word. So, again, first attempt, I went out, lifted my eyes, saw a flying scroll, brought the justice of the Lord along its patrol. The final version was, "Wicked as I am, write it all down on a flying scroll, send it on the wind on a flying scroll." I like that a lot better personally, and I think it's because, for one, it's more personal, it's reflecting on my condition instead of just saying what the verse said. And to me, it's like further explaining what a flying scroll might mean, thinking about it in your imagination. It's being written on, for one thing, write it all down, and it's being sent on the wind. And that, for me, springs some imagery that I didn't have otherwise, so I like that version better. So go deep. All right, another idea for you, borrow aggressively. I think artists should be comfortable with borrowing things. Being inspired by an idea does not detract from your authenticity. So, for example, if you've been to, somebody's been to the Philly Art Museum. If you've been to the Philly Art Museum, you've probably seen this painting. It's a diptych of the Crucifixion by Rogier van der Weyden. Sorry, I butchered that. Dutch painter from 1460. And it's this amazing, masterful work. And there's a really striking element in each. It's a diptych, so it's two panels, like wood panels, I think. And it's huge. And there's these two big orange rectangles, as you can see, the tapestry on each panel. Okay. So that's one. And then now here is Orange and Tan, Mark Rothko. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this one. But I look at two of these and I'm like, big orange rectangle in both of them. Now, they share a common element, which is big orange rectangle. And I would argue that it's possible that both artists, even though they're a couple hundred years apart, may have chosen to depict a big orange rectangle in pursuit of like a possibly a similar emotion, I would say. Maybe Rothko had a totally different meaning behind the field of orange than van der Weyden did. But in any event, they share a common element, but no one is delegitimizing Rothko for using an element that was used by van der Weyden, right? And so for me, what that meant for me is I was borrowing a lot of stuff. So I like this ambient music artist, Aphex Twin. I don't know if anybody's heard of him. I got a couple people, okay. And I really like this Selected Ambient Works album, and there's a lot of really good synth sounds on there. And happy to admit, I completely ripped off one of the synth sounds where I went and I meticulously recreated exactly how it sounded, to me at least, and I used it in something because I think that it's okay to borrow aggressively. It's not like a trademark problem or something. It's just a inspiration, you know. So I'll play a little audio clip and you can hear. So this is, if I have sound, this is the Aphex Twin synth. this is the synth from the end of my song, An Oracle. So there you go. A little aggressive borrowing there, but I think it works out good. And then another thing you can do is borrow from yourself, because maybe you have an idea sitting on the old shelf, the bin of parts that you can knock the dust off that thing and pull it back out. So another song of mine, I had this, this is like a super old song idea from like forever ago. I'm a ghost, I froze to death out there. In my yearbook volume, they forgot my face. And then you change the key and the tempo and put it in a new song. It sounds like this. In a day, in a single day, I will take your iniquities away. In that day, you'll sit under your vine and invite your neighbor to your victory there. So there you go. So I'm glad that even though that first idea, it didn't really pan out, I kept that idea around and was able to reuse it. So borrow from yourself. All right. So conceptualization. We said be authentic, go deep, borrow aggressively. Those are our mantras for that. So that being said, it's time for formation. So what do I mean by formation? So we have a concept, strong concept. We get it. We got it. Now we need to create artifacts to communicate that concept or the message. And an artifact is a piece of output. So as artists, we create some form of output. Could be a photograph, a song, an urn, and it communicates a distillate part of your idea or the whole thing. For me, it was a part. Oxford Dictionary says an artifact is an object made by a human being, specifically an item of cultural or historical importance, or interest rather, which is what all of us are creating when we create art. It's an item of cultural interest, right? So for my project, the idea was to represent Zechariah in song. So for me, one artifact was one song per one chapter. And so that meant that in the framework of this project, there's 14 chapters of Zechariah, so I need around 14 songs for this vision to be successfully carried out, So one lesson, lessons learned, right? One lesson I learned from this was don't let the artifact distort the idea, because it's supposed to be in service of the idea. It's supposed to be this distillate part communicating the idea. So if it's messing it up, then we gotta prune it back. So I put a ton of work into a song for Zechariah chapter 4, and I ended up throwing it away because it was no good. It wasn't it wasn't no good. It was fine, but it wasn't the vision, right? So ruthlessly prune. And here's the rejected version of my song for chapter 4, called Mighty Mountain. He will bring to completion what we've hoped for all our lives. And he said, don't you worry, let me explain. By my spirit I'll make a way. Don't you worry, don't you strain. The mighty mountain will be made plain. Don't you worry, just let me explain. By So I like it. It makes me nod my head like it's a cool beat and everything. And this is what I mean by I got to be ruthless, because I do like it, but I don't. I went and I was reading the chapter. I was reading the chapter again and again, and it just wasn't giving me the feeling that I got when I read the chapter at all. It was way too bright and optimistic and not weird enough. not that it's the chapter is pessimistic, but it just wasn't weird enough. It wasn't giving me the right vibe, and so the album version of chapter 4 ended up being a totally different song.
Take a closer look, Zechariah, at the way the oil flows. It's not coming from a man's hand, but from a tree branch on its own. It means that I am with you to the end of the age.
Right, so I'm glad I pruned that one out. Maybe it'll come back, but for now, glad I pruned it. All right, another formation thing that I was working on is having a game plan and sticking with it, which can be hard, I know, for my musician friends especially, or probably all artists, but we get off track, which can be good. A little journey of exploration or whatever is cool. But if you're really trying to get things, get this project done, we got to have a game plan. So for me, I kind of was doing rounds because I knew I had to have these 14 or so artifacts. And so I did a round of lyrics where I got Zechariah out and I got Bible concordances and commentaries out, and I was really just studying the book to make sure I understood what I was talking about. And then I would write rough lyrics for each chapter from that. And then kind of in that round, I would try to come up with some draft like melodies and chords for stuff. And then I came back around and had a round of full arrangement. So taking the lyrics, the melodies, the chords, and then structuring the songs out, how they were going to go energy-wise. And then finally, I would go through one by one and do finalizing lyrics, doing a round of recording of just vocals to knock that out, and then like production, mixing, all that. And I found that was really helpful to help me get through, because it's like I got to do all this stuff, but I was able to get through it, and I was able to have a greater level of consistency in the output, because I was kind of in a similar headspace the whole time I was doing one phase. So I was able to go back to all the drafts and say, like, I didn't like this thing that I was doing, And so in that way, I think just having like some rounds or waves was helpful for me. So here's a clip of a really rough, when I say rough, like original thing, like here's what I mean, and it'll be painful. So.
Rejoice, oh, shout out on the land. Kings coming, righteous and victorious. Lowly, riding on. Lowly, riding on a donkey.
There we go. So that's rough. That's the rough phase. That's cool. Like, that's good. And then the next phase was the draft, where it's like it's arranged. So you'll hear the like key is set. There's a metronome, so like the tempo is set. And so here's that version.
Rejoice, oh, shout out and be glad. Your King is coming, righteous and victorious. Lowly riding on a donkey, on the cold foal of a donkey.
Cool. So then finally final version, you'll hear has a totally re-recorded vocal part and like full production, so it sounds a lot clearer and louder and all that.
Rejoice, so shout out and be glad. Your king is coming, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey.
So there you go. That was my game plan. Maybe you have a different game plan, but I think it's good to have one so that you can get through it like that. All right, so here's the next step then, or kind of feeds into that. But at my work, I'm a web developer, computer programmer, and we have when we have a task to do, we'll assign some acceptance criteria to it. And what we mean by that is there's Jeff knows, yeah, exactly. There's a criteria that this task must reach for me to accept it as done. And I think that could be useful for any artistic project, because the biggest thing when I talk to artists, they struggle with, I don't know when I'm done. How do I stop? And so it's tough. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to do that, but maybe there's objective standards and subjective standards that you could create for your own acceptance criteria for yourself. So for music, I'm like, well, okay, objectively, can I hear the parts I want to hear? Like in that thing we just listened to, the vocal in the draft was like really buried and I couldn't really hear. And so that had to come out objectively before it would be done. Is it too long or too short? Like, hey, if it's only a minute long as a song, could be cool, but maybe you're not really doing justice to the idea, you know? And then subjective standards for music would be like, does the energy rise and fall the way I heard it in my head? Does it make me feel the way I want to feel? Like that chapter 4 song example. Does it make me feel the way I want to feel when someone else... Sorry. Does it make me feel the way I want someone else to feel? That's what I'm trying to say. And then a big one for me is, does it put a grin on my face when I listen back? Because sometimes I'll do something and I'm like really picking it apart and not sure about it. And I put it away and I go back and listen to it 3 months later and I'm like, hey, this is cool, you know? And it's like, oh, all right, well, maybe it is done, you know? It's more fully baked than I realized. So yeah, definitely would encourage that. Some kind of acceptance criteria. So summary on formation phase. So distill the idea into artifacts, which for me was chapters, songs. Have a game plan, and create some acceptance criteria for yourself or for your project. Cool. So that takes us to distribution. All right, making your artifacts experienceable. So you've generated an artistic concept. That was our first section, which carries some authentic meaning for you. And then in our second section, you distilled it into artifacts, which successfully communicate your concept. Now what? Okay, so you have options. You could keep it to yourself. You could just sit on it. And I think that's perfectly acceptable. It's totally fine. There's tons of people who are really into cooking, and they cook themselves the best steak that humanity has ever tasted, and then they eat it, and then they go on with their life, you know? MoMA is not calling them up to be like, we need that steak. They should, but they're not. But that's perfectly acceptable, and you know, from a faith perspective, from a Christian perspective, it's totally acceptable as it's not just that you're sitting on it; it's your act of worship to God, because you can't do any art without the talents that He's blessed you with and the gifts that He's blessed you with. So intrinsically, by doing the thing, you are automatically not doing it by yourself as much as you'd like to think so, because you're doing it in worship, whether you like it or not. And so that's one option. And then another option would be to casually release it. I think that's cool. I've had, like, sometimes people are like, oh, yeah, like, hey, I worked on this thing. It's no big deal, but, like, I emailed it to you if you want to check it out. It's like, all right, that's cool, too. Like, some people want to support you and hear what you have done. So that's a totally legitimate option as well. And then finally, the thing that I think we mostly think of for like distribution is, okay, really get it out there. So throw an art show, concert, start a social media thing, whatever it is for you, for your art form, really get it out there. That's another option. And I think these are all perfectly acceptable things, but I would like to challenge everyone here that, like, maybe the second and third option are slightly better, and maybe it's even better the farther you go down the list. I don't know. I mean, I'm not telling you what to do, but I think I can back it up. So, because your artfulness is a gift from God, and therefore I encourage you to embrace it. And so here's some support for that statement. I'm going to read you this long thing from Exodus 35 about sharing your artistry. Moses said to the Israelites, "See, the Lord has chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and he has filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, with understanding, with knowledge, and with all kinds of skills to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, and bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, and to engage in all kinds of artistic crafts. And he has given both him and Oholiab, son of Ashimach, of the tribe of Dan, the ability to teach others. He has filled them with skill to do all kinds of work as engravers, designers, embroiderers in blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and fine linen, and weavers, all of them skilled workers and designers." And some things that pop out at me from that is he's filled with the Spirit of God, and it seems that that leads to all kinds of skills, and that the skills are not strictly functional, but that they're aesthetic. They're not weaving, or they're not strictly building with bronze. You know, they're building with gold and bronze. Didn't mean to diss bronze there. If anybody's big bronze fans in the house, but and it's not. He's not making just burlap blankets or something. He's weaving in blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. So clearly, there's emphasis on the importance of aesthetic. And he says in this translation, you know, engage in all kinds of artistic crafts. So just a word of encouragement there for embracing that. And then I'll go even further on that. There's a quote I really like from J.R.R. Tolkien, author of the Lord of the Rings series, who you may have heard of. He has this whole thing about sub-creation, being a sub-creator, where we are created by God, and in turn, He intends us to create, and that creating is an active worship of Him, as part of being in His image, right? So Tolkien, in this poem, says, "Man, sub-creator, the refracted light through whom is splintered from a single white to many hues and endlessly combined in living shapes that move from mind to mind." So that's the gift that we have from God, is we can create from simple things. We can refract the light and create from simple things, and our creation moves from mind to mind. As I create something and share it with you, and it goes to your mind, and likewise. And that since God does that for us, that we ought to do that for each other. And then finally, perhaps God may even intend to work something miraculous through your artful expression of worship, of creative worship. And I just want to have us think on this story from Acts 20, where it says, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once all the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. Did Paul and Silas anticipate that would happen? I don't know. But certainly God used that holy moment of worship that they were personally engaging in to work something miraculous in the real world that I'm going to go out on a limb and say they didn't see that coming. Maybe they did. I don't know. So that's just a beautiful thing, and I want that to further encourage you when we go back to this list. What are your options? Hey, I'm thankful that Monet shared that with us. I don't know what his faith was like, but I'm thankful for that, and thankful for each one of you that follows this call and creates and shares your art as well. So, thank you very much. That's all I have. I appreciate your attendance and attentiveness. And Brenda's going to come up, but I think we're going to do a little Q&A, like if anybody has any thoughts or questions.
Yeah, plenty of time for thoughts and questions. So I'm going to bring this mic over to you. If you have questions, just raise your hand, and I'm going to give you the mic so that you can speak into it.
Hi. I'm curious how you came up with the artwork for your album cover for a second.
Ooh. Thank you for the question. I am trying to think if I have a picture of it. I do. Let me go back. Got to skip back. Whoop, through the influencers. There we go. There's the album art. So thinking along the lines of the framework and knowing the artifacts I needed to produce, I quickly realized that I would have to be able to, I wanted to have something consistent because it's all in one theme, and I needed something that I'd be able to crank out. So I wasn't ready to create a unique piece for each thing. So I did some research, and I found this dude, Gustave Doré, did wood carvings illustrating the Bible. There's a really famous historic Bible called the Gustave Doré Bible, I think. And yeah, they're these woodcut prints, and they're in the public domain to use. And so I came up with I'm going to use his illustrations of Zechariah and other stories of the Bible, and for each release. So sorry, I should say, because I released a bunch of singles with this, and they each had their own art that was all Gustave Doré. And each one had a color and a element that was highlighted in that color in the art. So this one, the color is lilac, and highlighted is his robe. For my single for my song Red Horse, it was a carving of the red horse. The color was red, kind of on the nose there, but went with it. And the horse was highlighted. And so I kind of continued that pattern. So again, fitting in the framework, making things easy on myself.
Is there somebody
Thanks
else
for the
over
question.
here? Oh, yeah.
What's the significance of your name for Tuesday?
Oh, good question. Good question. I've always said that anything can happen on a Tuesday. It's sits right in between the days there. Monday is kind of a bummer. Wednesday, you're we're halfway done with the work week. Ooh. I don't know. Thursday is Friday. They got their own thing going on, but Tuesday it's special. And I also was saying that I'm not aspiring to make music good enough for a Friday or Saturday. But if I can hit that Tuesday sweet spot, music for a Tuesday is totally where I'm at. So.
Yeah.
You might have answered this already when you were talking about writing, but when you're writing music, do you usually start with lyrics or do you start with a melody typically? Which comes first?
Good question. With this one, I started with lyrics because it was so conceptually heavy, I guess. Like, I had a lot of constraint on what the lyrics would be, I guess. You know what I mean? So, like, honestly, what I was doing was I would pull up either in a physical Bible or on my computer, like, the chapter, and I would just try to read it while playing guitar at the same time without writing anything. And then I would take note of phrases that worked well together, and I would make up, a lot of the times the phrases didn't go well together just by them, just straight out of the text. And I'd have to go and like say, okay, what does this actually mean? And how can I write something to represent it well? But a lot of the times there's a lot of lyrics on the album that are just directly from the translation. So, but definitely lyrics first for this one.
Anybody else?
So how did you stick to the game plan while keeping the creative process alive through your day-to-day?
That's a really good question. Yeah, so, I mean, it took me a really long time. So maybe that's part of how, like, there was definitely times where I was really frustrated. Like that song I shared that, like, just wasn't hitting right for me. But I think I would argue that sticking to the game plan probably helped me pull up out of those frustrations quicker, because I would be like, oh, I'm unhappy with how this creative process is going, but I can skip to a different song, or I could skip to a different step of the game plan. Like if I had a song that I was really happy with that was in the pre-final phase, and I was really frustrated with writing a new song for one of these other ones, I could be like, well, I'm going to put this aside for a minute and go like finish the other one because that'll make me feel good, you know, instead of get frustrated. Does that help answer your question? Cool.
Is that to say you gave yourself a time deadline? Oh, did you give yourself a time deadline?
I kind of did, because I had, since I mentioned I was releasing each song consecutively, and I kind of was trying to not have too much dead air in between, because I would have one, you know, ready to go, and I'd release it, and then there was a little time pressure to be like, oh, well, people are thinking about it, and it would be good if I could put out another one within like a month or something. And a lot of the times that stretched to 2 months, or, you know.
Yeah, I find that it's helpful to, I think a lot of artists do well, or have to have some kind of pressure like that, or we just kind of wander in the mist.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So.
100%. Yeah, I agree. So that was good. It was good for me to have that little peer pressure of like, oh, people actually listened to the first one. Now I got to make the second one. And like.
Audrey, do you have one?
As you were studying Zechariah, was there anything in particular that really struck you or surprised you from the scriptures that has kind of stuck with you?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. It was crazy. I would recommend that you read it for sure. I was really struck by how much prophecy is in there. It's really pretty amazing. I played a clip of that one song that's about the prophecy of riding into Jerusalem on the donkey. There's the prophecy that he would be pierced for our transgressions and all this stuff. There's a prophecy of Judas Iscariot receiving the 30 silver pieces. It's pretty amazing. That I was like, wow, I can't believe. I mean, I know I've heard it before, but I hadn't really studied it to that extent, and it was really cool to see all that stuff popping out. Like, it just flies off the page from the New Testament. 800 years before. So that was cool.
You mentioned that something that was important to you is, does this make me feel how I want my listeners to feel? So how do you want your listeners to feel?
I guess it's a circular thing, because I want them to feel like how I felt when I was reading the chapter in this case. Like when in that one example, I was reading that chapter 4, and it's about Zechariah in this dream, and he's like dreaming about this crazy courtroom scene with God and Satan and all this stuff, and then this angel comes along and shakes him awake, and he like wakes up into a new dream basically. And there's this shimmering lampstand in the desert that's like doing all this crazy stuff, and it's just very like, whoa, like crazy otherworldly stuff. And I kind of like this. I slipped in this illustration. This picture is cool. This guy, visual artist, did this Zechariah thing, and it's like it really captures a lot of the just wild, like crazy otherworldly stuff that's going on with poor Zechariah is getting inundated with these visions. So I wanted to capture some of that, and then also just keep it, like you were saying about the elements of the text that were interesting, like prophecy and everything. Like I wanted to keep that also loud and clear. So it wasn't just like, oh, this is confusing. It's like, there's a message. So that's what I wanted them to feel, all that stuff.
Bryson and I are pretty big fans, and one of
thanks,
the
guys.
songs that we really like is called "Should We Fast?"
Oh, yeah.
And I think Bryson's brought that up too many times. But I would love to know specifically that one. Obviously, like the inspiration behind the awesome jam part at the end. Yeah, if you could speak to that song specifically, if you feel comfortable.
I definitely can. So yeah, it's called "Should We Fast" is the song, and it's chapters 7 and 8, and it's really important narratively to the whole book. And so I wanted to make it a really good song because I think it's important. Basically, just for background, like in the chapter, the priests go to, I think they go to Zechariah and say, hey, should we keep fasting and stuff in the 9th month or whatever it is, like we have for years and years and years? And, like go ask God that, and God comes back with the message of like, well, should we fast? He basically says, I don't know. When you fast, are you fasting for me? And when you pray, are you praying for me? And he goes on to say, like, all I ask from you is that you would like seek justice and walk humbly and all this stuff. And that if you just fast and pray, I'll turn away from you. I don't care that you're praying. I care that you're praying and seeking me. Not just like in a religious demonstration, I guess, is kind of what they were doing. So there's a lot of intensity there. And so I wanted the instrumental to reflect that. And it's like the most angsty that we ever see God be, because he's very angry. He's very angry at the priests. And it kind of reminded me of Jesus in Matthew when he's really chewing out the priests and, saying, oh, you whitewashed tombs and all this stuff. It's like we see like another slice of that sort of righteous indignation. And so I wanted the instrumental to be like pretty fierce. But when he goes through and he reams them out and all this stuff, he then turns around and says, yeah, I'm going to turn away from you because you're doing all this and blah, 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 but I will return, which is like the grace aspect. Like they did nothing. They did no change in anything that they were doing because he's literally mid-speech and he's still angry, and then he flips it around and says, I will return, I won't hide, I'll turn my face back to you first. So that was cool. So that's like, since you know the song, like there's that first part with some of the intricate guitar and stuff is like when there's some angst. And then there's a big quiet synth section where he's like bringing in the grace. And then I tied it up with that jam part at the end that you're talking about. I was going to write more lyrics, and I was like, no, let's just punctuate it with this at the end. It's cool. Like, it felt like a good full stop after he says, like, I will return. And then we just go into instrumental because what more needs to be said, you know? So thanks for asking. Glad you liked that one.
Mark.
Matt.
Hey, just want to say thanks. This is so inspiring in so many ways. The question I was going to ask is, which song on the album is your favorite and why? And then I want you to play it in its entirety. But now I'm so fascinated about Should We Fast, and that I think that's the one. But maybe that is your favorite track on the album. But maybe you can answer the question and play both of them. I don't know.
Okay.
The only thing I'm disappointed in is I need more music tonight with this sound system. Your album sounds so good in the sound system. Am I still talking, Brennan?
Am I still talking? Oh, okay. I might need to call on Steve then in that case. Do you want to play Should We Fast? And we can think about the lyrical content I just talked about. Yeah, sure. We can listen. But you gotta start at the beginning. You gotta start at the beginning. There's a whole good part before that.
Should we fast and keep all our religious ways? Should we make a show of keeping all the holy days? Should we lock the doors and turn where we can pour? Comfortably ignore the pain. Turn away, and I will turn away from you. Hide away, and I will hide my light from you. But I will return, for I burn with jealousy. I love you still, even when you're far from me.
There you go. There you go. Should we do one more, or All right.
Is that your favorite song on the
I don't
album?
know. It's hard. I do really like that one. I really like how that came out. And I should mention that guitar lick or whatever you want to call it was one of those found sounds where that was like originally called grilled cheese sketch.wave for like 3 years or something. And then I put that recording in there as like the main riff and built the track around it. So that was cool.
I think we should do another one.
All right.
Of your choosing, and tell us why.
I don't know if this is my favorite, but it's cool. So I think you should do An Oracle, which is the last song. And it's cool because it has a lot of, pretty much almost all the lyrics are directly from the text. Like almost like line for line of a couple different excerpts. And it has some of the heaviest prophetic content. And I cry at the end, which is sometimes good. So yeah, I play that one. That's the last song on the album. Yeah. You tell them what will happen, tell them Zechariah, tell them Zechariah, tell them I need you to tell them what will happen, tell them Zechariah, tell them Zechariah, tell them I need you to tell them what will happen, tell them Zechariah. Tell them I need you to tell them what will happen, Zechariah. And I will pour out on the house of David, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and the weeping will echo across the hills, across the hills, and the weeping will echo across the hills, across the hills. And I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, a spirit of grace and supplication. And on that day, a fountain will be open, and it will serve to cleanse them. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
My goodness. We got time for a couple more. If there's,
Not a question, but a comment. This album reminds me very much so of Sufjan Stevens. I don't know if you're familiar. That's a
yeah.
huge compliment. I love his music, and
Awesome.
it's very. I mean, just that ethereal sound and all of the, yeah.
Thank you.
It sounds a lot like him. So I don't know. Maybe you've drawn inspiration from him too. But
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's great. And he's heavy on the concept too, and amazing lyrics too. So, yeah, shout out to Sufjan. That's good stuff. Which I should say, part of my, I guess, conceptualization process was I made a playlist of inspirations. That it was like, I knew I was going to do the thing, so I think the playlist was called like Zechariah Inspirations before I had really formed anything, because I knew I wanted to do that borrowing thing. And so I was like, I'm going to take like a kick drum from this song and like this bass from this song or whatever. So Sufjan might have made it on there.
This really was a wonderful presentation, Mr. Tuesday, so thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Tuesday.
And I feel like I could pick your brain for an hour, but my question is, how do you deal, now that you've written an album, a couple EPs, how do you deal with the problem of the blank page and of finding an idea that you believe in enough to develop? I thought it was great you showed some of your process on that one stanza, because you have the first one and you got the idea, but you're kind of poking and prodding it. Then you have it developed. It's really beautiful with the poetic devices, the repetition, and you have what you want, which is the form supporting the content. But I find it so hard to actually get something where, because you're walking around, you're a bundle of thoughts and emotions, and you think you get a notebook filled with different lines but I find I don't believe in any of them. Then you don't want to spend your time on something you're not going to like in the end. So how do you deal with that and coming up with something that you believe in enough to want to develop?
That's a good question. Yeah, so you're saying like you have some idea and then you're walking around and writing it down, and then you come back to it later and you're not so sure about it. Is that kind of what you're thinking? Yeah. Which, by the way, I just read some interview with Phoebe Bridgers. She says she writes all her lyrics walking around, and she associates them with wherever she was walking when she wrote it. So anyway, walking around must be good by that judgment. Yeah, I guess so. The question is really in terms of when you revisit it, how you decide what to keep and what to toss out, I guess. And that's not, I mean, I wish I had an easy answer for you. I think that one example was maybe in that little snippet that I shared where I thought the one was too narrative, and then changed some of the voice of it a little bit. Now, I think your question goes back to the acceptance criteria, though, of like, well, how did I decide that the first one was no good and the second one I was going to go with? And so I think it's because I had that acceptance criteria and I was willing to ruthlessly prune and say, well, my goal here is to represent the chapter. And so that's like a cheat code that I was using, I think, is to put all that restriction on myself, Or it was like, I may have had better ideas for a different song, and I wrote them down and put them away because I knew that they were not like the right thing for that moment. I don't know. Does that answer the question, or do you have a follow-up question?
Just to some extent, I think I guess like maybe before, like deciding before you have even the criteria is really the thing. Like, how do you get something that, like, I want to develop this into something out of all the other ideas you may have? I don't know, as you've written things, how have you gotten to that point that like this is interesting enough idea in itself that I want to keep pruning this thing?
I gotcha. Yeah, I think I actually have a better answer for that. I was talking earlier about how I was releasing a bunch of singles, and I was kind of in between, like, oh, what would be a cool idea for my next project? And, you know, was getting inspired by some things, and then what hit me like a truck was the juxtaposition of the war in the Ukraine had just started, and then that awful school shooting in Texas, the Uvalde shooting had just happened. And it was just like, I was just moping around for like a week of like, man, the world is so horrible. And that drove me to work on some, you know, work some of that out with trying to do some songwriting. And I was writing some like really pointed, like, here's what I think about that kind of songs of like, I'm going to tell you what I think about the gun control or something. And, but it wasn't like, I was like, I don't think that's what I want to say. I don't have a well-formed enough opinion about that to be writing a song about that. And so what do I really believe in this situation? And that's what drove me to Zechariah originally, was because there's a lot of themes of struggling with like pain and anger and stuff in the book that God puts forth. And I decided that that was a better concept than me saying something about it, because I don't believe enough in what I have to say about it, to your point, that I don't trust myself to say the right thing about it at that point, where I decided I would rather just go and see what God said to Zechariah about some of the things that I was processing, I guess.
Did you have another one?
Trying to figure out how to ask my question. So like the cover art that you showed, it seemed like sonically some of the birds and the rain were kind of symbolic of that imagery. So is that kind of like maybe along your thought process when, like, did you close your eyes to kind of vision what it might appear like sonically?
That's a good question. I think that I really like using like found sounds in my songs. Like kind of how I was saying, I took that whole song idea from before. It's like a found thing that I'm like, I'm going to drag this in here. And it was kind of similar with like the birds and rain sounds and other little funny sounds that are in some of the tracks. A lot of times it was just like, for the birds, it was just, there was birds outside. And I was playing the song on guitar, working on writing it. And I was like, man, this doesn't hit the same without the birds. Like, so I popped my studio is on the 3rd floor of our house. And so I popped like a microphone in each window for a little stereo bird effect and recorded. I was like, I want those birds right now. Keep doing, like, take it from the top, birds. Like, give me that again. We're rolling now. Like, sing that song again. And so I took those birds. And then to your question, the rain was more like you're saying, where I was just picturing in that last song that we listened to, like the melancholy environment of the crucifixion, and picturing just a bleak, raining night. And just, you know, Christ on the cross in the cold rain. So that's where that one came from. The rain stick came in because my parents got me a rain stick for Christmas, or my mom got me a rain stick for Christmas, I think. And I just needed some percussion. Also featured on percussion on the album is a container of dill and peppercorns.
What?
Yeah, for a shaker.
Nuh-uh.
Oh yeah, and it smelled really good when I was done. Shake it all up.
One more, Jesse.
I think you said this project took like 2 years. So I guess can you talk about like working on a project for that long of a time frame? Maybe like the waves of inspiration and how you dealt with like feeling stuck or feeling like this is no good, so I'm gonna just like forget this idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely had those waves. Like, that's an astute question. I think I would just really try to... I figured it's a big project, and I should let myself sometimes be forced to work on it, like we were talking about the deadlines. But also, there was lots of times when I was just like, I don't feel like working on this. I'm going to play video games or whatever. I'm going to take a walk. So I didn't feel like I was just shackled to it. Because there was like, I don't know, there's like some weekend or something that like Alex was gone. And I was like, I'm going to work on this all weekend and eat microwave food and just grind, And it was horrible because I didn't get anything done at all. Every idea I had was awful, and I threw it all out. And I was like, "This is the dumbest weekend ever. It's just terrible." And so I kind of learned from that. I still have to learn from that, but like I try to not do that anymore because it's like apparently you can't force it sometimes. But that being said, that kind of plays in your question too. Is like, oh, so there were things in there that I did decide, like, all right, this is bad, and I feel uninspired and upset about it. And I just, again, with the ruthless adherence to the vision, I was like, it's gotta go. It's no good. So, yeah. But definitely struggle over such a long period of time.
Do you think it could have taken less than 2 years?
Yeah, probably. Well, I don't know. It's hard. It's impossible to say because if it had taken less than 2 years, it would be a different thing.
Right.
Like I could have probably pumped it out quicker or been more ruthless or whatever, but might not have got the birds.
Right.
Maybe it wouldn't have been the same thing. And like I spent a lot of time just agonizing over the mix and stuff because I'm mixing my own and I also think that's just fun. But since I released like one single at a time, so it was like, here's chapter 1, here's chapter 1 and 2, here's chapter 1, 2, and 3. I would go back and revisit the mix for the already released ones almost every time, which was kind of just like torturing myself. But it was cool because I would be listening to this version for 5 weeks, and I'd be like, that stupid hi-hat that comes in at 2 minutes and whatever is too loud. And like, I'm going to go back into the project and just go, doot, and then, export it again. And then that next version, I'd find something else to change and all that. So if I didn't do that, it would have gone faster. For sure.
For sake of time, I can't believe it. We have been questioning back and forth for almost an hour. Can you guys believe that?
Thanks for all the questions, everybody.
Plenty of time to hang and keep picking Mark's brain if you want to after this. Mark, like beyond inspiring. That was above and beyond. That was amazing.
Thanks for hanging out and asking good questions.
I think I speak for all of us when I say we needed it. That was super helpful and also just cool to learn about you. And I hope I get to hear you talk about that again someday.
All right. Well, I hope you all can take some lessons learned from that and apply it to your own project. And I can't wait to hear all the artistry that you guys are going to do. I'm excited. So
Yeah.
don't be a stranger.
Thanks for paving the way. If everybody would sit tight, if you don't mind, 2 quick announcements. I wanted to invite Amber up to talk about the Advent Gallery coming up real quick. And then Audrey, if you don't mind, we have a dance announcement as well. Welcome, Amber.
Hello, thank you guys. How are you all? And this is also Eden. As you guys probably know Eden Brown well, she is helping me so much in this year's Advent Gallery. So we have the absolute privilege of putting on the Advent Gallery this year. So first of all, thank you. So many of you that I see have already reached out to us and are working on pieces. That is so appreciated. So thank you for doing that. You guys have a gift, and you're taking time to share your gift with many people and also to worship the Lord. And so that's just like a really, really cool thing. So thank you for that. For anyone who doesn't know about the Advent Gallery, this year's theme is Born is the King of Blessings. The PAI team put on an awesome song called Born is the King, right? And so we kind of took it from that, which is based off the Beatitudes. So we are really encouraging artists to pour into Scripture, reading through Matthew 5, 1 through 12 of what are the Beatitudes? What is Jesus saying when he's explaining these blessings that are to the poor in spirit, to those who mourn, for the peacemakers, and going through all of those, and what does that look like? What does that look like in our lives, and how do we express that? And so that is the theme. We ask that you work inside that theme, but think outside the box as well in what you're creating. And so if it's photography or a painting, a writing piece, you really have a lot of creativity you can do with that. Also, we are open to live performances. We have a few. We have 3 already confirmed and signed up, so we are looking for a few more, not many more because it isn't a time constraint. So if you're interested in signing up, I did just grab a piece of paper and a pen, so I will pass it around. But I also have these super little flyers here of just more information that has Eden and I's email on it. If you did sign up, just to let you know, all of your art has to be turned in by November 19th. That is the deadline. We have to have a cutoff, and we need it in time so that we can put the gallery together. And then we are having a big opening at night, November 4th. So December, thank you. December 4th, that would have been tomorrow, so that would make no sense. But yes, December 4th from 6:30 to 9, right here. Bring your friends, bring your family. They can come worship the Lord as well, look at your art, see what you guys have done and spent so much time on. So if you felt inspired by what Mark said about a way to distribute your art, this is one of those ways. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Eden, do you have anything to add?
Hi, I'm Eden. If you guys have any installation needs, I'm the person to talk to about that, and I would also love it if you can come and invite people. Abby Carmody Wallace and I are working on putting out more flyers and information that will be more widely dispersed so that that's easy, and we would love it to be something that a lot of people in the community can come to and be a part of because we have a lot of beautiful submissions coming. So if you have any questions about how do I go about making art? What does writing about this look like? Or I want to put this sculpture up in this space. How do I do that? Definitely reach out to Amber and I. So thank you.
Yeah, that's it. I'll leave this, and then this has like the dates and everything on there as well. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. These 2 are unreal. Unreal. Connect with them. Audrey.
Hello, I am Audrey, and I dance with Glorified Dance Theater, which is a Christian ballet company in the area. I have actually firsthand danced to 7 Lamps, and so it was really cool process. It felt like a dream, basically. And so I was like, yeah, I think that's probably along the lines of what he was going for. And so we have an upcoming performance next weekend. So there's a group gathering together from Providence, going to the 2:30 show on Saturday. So the performance consists of 3 ballets, each based on passages from the New Testament. There's one about being ready to give a defense for the faith that we have. There's one about the fruit of the Spirit. Then there's one of like running the race with endurance. And so they're all a little variety of things. I really enjoyed dancing them and hope that more people can come. And so please invite friends and families and neighbors. And dance is an art that not all of us maybe are as familiar with connecting to, but I feel like even talking, like hearing from Mark of seeing the process, there are a lot of parallels and a lot of similarities to visual art and music, and obviously we're dancing to music, so there's a lot of collaboration there. So the 2:30 show has a talk back at the end of the show, and so it gives the audience a time to dialogue with the dancers, and you'll probably see me up there, and with our director, Melody. So you can find tickets at glorifypa.org. The tickets are all pay what you will, so trying to make it as accessible as possible. And for more information about being a part of the group that's going, you can send an email to Melody Mendoza, who's our director, at mmendoza@Glorify Performing Arts. And if you don't remember any of that, come talk to me.
Thanks, Audrey. Man, that was a great night. Guys, feel free to hang, mingle as long as you want. There's still some more Chick-fil-A chilling out there. Yeah, thank you all for being here. Looking forward to next time we're all together. And thank you again to Mark and for Tuesday. Have a great night, everybody.
It's not coming from a man's hand, but from a tree branch on its own. It means that I am with you to the end of the age. When I bring out the capstone, remember this day. It means that I